Hey guys, welcome back to another video. So as I say, if nothing needs repair, then something needs upgrade, right? Well, this needs repair. So we're out by our shed, and this is our ramp, okay? So as you can see, it is sadly needing some repair. I mean, it is falling apart and not bueno. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna repair this. Now, when you're repairing something, you can either rebuild it as it is existing, or you can modify however you want. So what I'm going to do is actually modify it. And so the first step is getting the existing falling apart ramp out of place. This isn't fastened to the shed anyway. I'm hoping it's not attached to the ground because that would make me probably throw my back out. All right? So let's just hope we'll see what happens. Oh, yeah.
Oh, it comes up.
Okay, so all of this probably this board and this board here used to look like this board, and this board was left behind. So anyway, I'm not going to rebuild it, and there's a reason why. So as you can see here, the floor of the shed here, when you close the door, you have this little bit here overlaps it, right? And so what happens is there's still a lip here. So one of the reasons why I'm wanting to replace this is because as I'm pulling my mower in and out of here, this is deteriorated away so badly that there's a huge gap here. And coming down, it really just, I mean, my mower slams hard. Getting the mower back up, I'm having to hit this ramp at an accelerated speed. It's making my mower pop a wheelie as I'm trying to pull it into my shed, and it gets pretty wild sometimes. Not to mention that it's going to slowly tear away my shed floor here, and it's also going to lead to damaging my tires. So what I'm going to do is, if I rebuild it, at best, I have to have it low enough to where I can close this. If it was level with this, that lip would prevent the door from closing. So what I'm going to do is kind of like how the U-Haul trucks have. They have that ramp that pulls out, and you pull it out, and you have to lift it up and put it on the floor. That's the idea that I'm going to do. So I'm going to build a ramp that's going to have some lips that'll set up here, and then when I'm not using it, I'm going to move the whole ramp back, slide it down, so I can close the doors. And the way that I'm going to do that, it was with a couple pieces that I found laying around the house. So these two pieces here, I happen to find these just hanging out under my deck, and so what I'll do is unbolt these bolts here and take this piece off. And then the idea that I'm going to do is the same basic concept. So I'll be able to measure out some wood. And so there's basically my ramp set. And so I'm going to cut a little bit longer than this. The original deck was about 48 inches, 45 inches long or so. So I'm probably going to do about 42. So I'm going to take some wood like this, cut it 5 pieces of this at 42 inches long. And then underneath them, I'm going to take some 2x4 and run 3 bars, and then mount these to those 3 bars, mount these to 2 of these pieces, and then that's going to be my ramp. So the first step is getting the materials. So I've already gone to the store. I have my 2x4s. I have my 1.5x9s, and so it's just a matter of cutting them to length. So the first, cut these to 42 inches. All right, guys, so this is one of my pieces of lumber. Like I said, I got it measured out 42 inches. So I'm just going to cut this, and that's going to be the first one. And then we're just going to repeat that cut 4 more times, and then that's going to be the base of our new platform. All right, guys, so we have our 5 pieces cut at 42 inches. You might notice that they're different colors. These 3 were part of a board that I found underneath my deck. These 2 are part of a board that I went and bought because I didn't have enough material. So anyway, what I've done is I've laid them now next to side by side, so that way I can measure how long or how wide I need to make my support cuts. And so that is 46.5 inches. And so what I'll do is I'm going to cut a 2x4 at 46.5 inches. And I'll cut 3 pieces. One will be basically for the top, one for the middle, and then one for the bottom. Alright guys, so what I have here is my 1/4-inch carriage bolt, and as you notice, this is a rounded top, and that's by design, so that way there's no sharp edges as you're putting your tire over. And it has this squared corner in here, and what this is going to do is as this sinks into the wood, this is how it's going to bite. So as you're tightening the nut down on the other side, it's not just going to sit and spin in place, because this is going to be sunk inside the wood. So here we already got our hole drilled out, so we'll put our carriage bolt on the other side coming through, because remember what we're looking at on this side, this is the bottom. And so we'll put our 2x4 in place. Okay, so the next step is going to be putting our washer on, putting our lock washer on, and this is what helps prevent the nut from coming off. And then we have the nut that goes on. And I could have gone a little bit shorter on our carriage bolts, but that's okay. I'd rather have a little bit too long than too short. And then we're just going to tighten this down in place. So our next step is I'm going to come over to the other side, and like I said, I'm going to do this, I'm going to get this nice and tight and snug, and then I'm going to do this board here, because once I have this board locked down with another carriage bolt through the middle, then I can go through and pre-drill these three and not have to worry about them separating as I'm drilling them. So all I got to do is just make sure that this 2x4 is lined up how I want it to be. It's pretty good. Grab my drill and my guide, get it basically where I think it should go, and drill it out. Okay. Now finish drilling through. And then put the next carriage bolt in. And that is going to keep the three middle boards locked up real nice and tight and snug, so it's going to give me that real good tight feeling that I want in my ramp here. Alright, so now that I got these in place, now all I have to do for the three middle ones is just make sure that it's lined up this way where I want them to be. I'll get all three of them lined up how I want them, and then I can do all three holes, put all three carriage bolts, and that's going to help speed up the process. Then it's just a matter of repeating it on more or less the middle, and then we'll touch base with you when we do the bottom side. Alright, so now that I've got these three drilled out, and now I can do the carriage bolts in all three, and then the top board is basically in place. Alright, so now we've got our last one for this initial piece in place. And so basically what we'll do is repeat the process. We're going to straighten our boards out again, and then we're going to do the middle one, so that way that's going to lock them lined up wise, and then we'll have to kind of dry fit it and put it in place in order to figure out where the last one needs to go. And again, since this is the going to be the bottom side of the board, it's okay if they're not if it's not perfectly lined up, if it's not perfectly centered, so no one's going to see. All right, guys. So now we've got the holes drilled out for the middle row. I'm in the process of putting these first two edges in, and like I said, once we get this board in place, it's going to really kind of lock the alignment of these other boards in place. And so And so, but we're going to run into a problem in the fact that if we bolt this one down tight, we're going to have a hard time being able to drill through because we can't move the board. We can't move these boards to drill through this way. So the way that we'll do that is we'll use our guide to get the hole started and straight, and then just by removing the guide, we gain a solid inch of space, and that should allow us to drill the rest of the way through to put our carriage bolts through for the 3 middle boards. Now currently I have this propped up, and because of that, this bolt has a lot of play in it. And I'm going to also have to consider that because that square part of the carriage bolt is what prevents the bolt itself from spinning in place as you're trying to tighten down the nut on the other side. So basically what I'm going to end up doing is once I get this board lined up and put in, I'll just take my my prop out of place, and then that's going to allow me to kind of hammer it in on the other side and be able to get the bite that I'm needing. So now that that's in place, I'm just going to move this so it's no longer being propped up, and then that way I can kind of use the driveway here as a back, and even just a little bit of a kind of a stomp on it, and that's going to help make that square part of the carriage bolt lock in place into the wood, so I don't have any problems tightening my my nuts down. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and tighten this down, and then I'm going to repeat the process on the other side, and then we'll show you what I meant in the middle to be able to make sure you have no problems getting your carriage bolts through. Place, and so what I'm going to do is lift it up just so I can put a little bit of a spacer in there to prop it up, and that's basically mainly just so I don't drill into my driveway. So the next step is just to get my guide, and that's going to help me just make sure that my pilot holes are straight. And I'm going to eyeball in and drill these holes. And this way, so now when I'm ready to go through, by removing my brace or my guide, now I have a nice straight pilot hole. I can just finish drilling the hole the rest of the way through. And now poke through the bottom board, so I'll be able to get my my carriage bolt through here with no problem without running the risk of damaging my driveway. So I'm just going to repeat the process for the other 2 boards here. Alright guys, so now that I got my holes drilled all the way through, I can just quite literally lift this up and then start poking my carriage bolts through the holes. Okay. And what I'll do is I'm just going to get them started. And then use the good old rubber mallet to get them to go the rest of the way through. And as you can see on this side over here, you see those carriage bolts, they sink down into the wood, and that square part is what's going to keep this carriage bolt holding in place and prevent it from spinning as you put the nut on. So I'll set it down and then just put on the washers and nylocks, cinch them all down. Right, so the next step that I need to do is I need to get the pieces of metal that's going to stand as my my little mounts that's going to lead up. So I got to take those off with these other pieces of wood and put them onto these ones. So I already have one piece in, and so what I'll do is end up putting this other piece in. And once I have this in place, I'll take my other 2x4 and I'm going to line it up just at the base of these pieces of metal and then put the carriage bolts in. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to dry fit it in place. If it fits good, I'm going to leave it alone. Because like I said, it doesn't need to be overwhelmingly beautiful. It's just a ramp so I can get my mower in and out of my shed without damaging my mower, without damaging my shed. First step is getting this other piece in here and then getting the last 2x4 in place. So the way that this works is you have this little lip here, and we're going to lip this underneath the wood down here, and then I'm going to hammer it to where it's going to force it to go onto place. Whoops. Try again. So the next thing I'm going to do is going to drill out these 2 holes, and then I'm going to put the carriage bolts through the other side and tighten them down, and that's going to push this or force this flush against that piece of wood. I'm just going to make sure the piece of board that I have underneath it is not going to be in the way as I drill this out. The other piece mounted down. So the last step is just going to be putting this brace in place, and we're going to basically do the exact same thing. We've got the board lined up on the on here how we want it, and so it's just going to be a matter of drilling our pilot holes and then sinking the carriage bolts through, and we're going to repeat the process. We'll put this side in and that side in, tighten them down, and then we can drill the 3 holes on here and finish that up. Alright, so here we are putting in the last one. So the next step is basically to set it in place and see how it fits. So like I said, the next thing, I'm going to move it over to where I need to move it. Alright guys, now I'm not going to lie, it's not the lightest of things ever, but like I said, you don't want it to be too lightweight because then the mower's going to break it. So what we're going to do is we're just going to set it down in place and basically see how it fits.
I think you got it. Close the door just to test it.
So, like I said, that right there, I may end up moving the, I might end up moving this up a little bit just because that's a pretty big bump right there. And what's
or you could put another brick on it.
And so it becomes a thing of what's the purpose of moving the bump from there to down here. And if I move this bottom 2x4 up probably, you know, to here, that's going to allow it to sit down another full 1.5 inches, 2 inches, and make it even that much less of a dramatic bump. But
well, you can dig the dirt out then, level it up instead of moving it.
Yeah, either way, I mean that's another option. I could also dig the dirt out, whichever is easier. Probably digging the dirt out's easier.
Yeah.
But that's the basic idea. And then, like I said, when the time comes, I may end up putting some type of like a little rope handle or something like that here, just so that way I can lift it up and pull it off. Because as I was mentioning here, if I try to close the door, that lip is going to hit the ramp and it's not going to let me close the door. So when I want to close the door, I'm going to have to devise a way to where I can basically just lift this ramp up and pull it off. And now the door will close. And then when I need to get in here or I need to utilize the ramp, it'll be opening the door and then putting the ramp back in place. Something like that. But overall, I think it's going to work well, and I'm happy with it. So, like I said, I think the last step I might do is just dig this down a little bit so that way it sits a little bit lower and to where it's not such a dramatic bump for my mower to go up and down. But other than that, I think it's good. So as always, guys, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Share this video if you find it helpful, if you think somebody else could utilize it and find it helpful as well. And as always, thank you for your support. Alright guys, so I'm just gonna dig a little bit out, just about maybe an inch or two, so that way when I lay this back in place, this won't be such a dramatic bump for my mower. So I just use the shovel to give me a baseline of where to dig at. I'm gonna move this out of the way.
Happy 4th, you guys. July 4th Eve, I guess, Ben?
Yeah.
It's gonna scare my poor kitty cat. Oh, I need that dirt, Ben.
Okay. Get a bucket. Alright, so I'm going to say that's probably good. The last thing is just to set it back down and see what it looks like. I think that's a significantly less dramatic drop from a mower, and I think that's not going to cause any kind of problems, and I'm happy with it. So, like I said, there it is. And that's like I said, if something doesn't need repair, it needs upgrade. Well, it needed repair, so we got it. The last step, try it out.
Okay, good luck.
Yeah, guys, that's definitely a lot better than having to rev it up and ram it in and popping wheelies as I'm driving into my my shed. So as time goes by and that settles a little more in place, that'll be even that much better. So overall, I'm very, very happy with how it turned out. I think it looks nice enough, and it's sturdy and it serves a purpose. So, all right, again, thank you for your support.